Let's bring in the holiday panel. Erika Donalds, who is an entrepreneur, an education expert, the chair of all things amazing, education opportunity, and the state chair of Florida. She doesn't stop working. She will be the next First Lady of Florida. Erika Donalds, welcome to the holiday panel. My buddy over there, the president and executive editor of the Daily Signal, Rob Bluey. And then bringing the holiday cheer to all of us is legal and political strategist, commentator extraordinaire, Katie Zacharia. Good to see you guys.
Great to be here.
Happy Christmas Eve. It's a thing. I just said it.
Also known as Festivus, for those who saw.
Yes. Well, I'm going to get to Festivus in a minute because Senator Rand Paul has made something of this as well, but we'll touch on that. But the president got an early Christmas gift this morning, Rob Bluey. This GDP report comes out, and this is the president writing on Truth Social. Q3 GDP came in at 4.3, blowing past, and that's all in caps. That's why I read it that way. Expectations of 3.2. 60 of 61 Bloomberg economists got it wrong, but Trump, in quotes and caps, and some other geniuses got it right. The success is due to good government and tariffs. Consumer spending is strong. Net exports are way up. Imports and trade deficits way down. There is no inflation because of my tax bill, blah, blah, blah. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Rob Bluey, for all this talk about the economy and affordability, not a bad Christmas gift for the president and the American people.
To quote President Trump, this is huge, Sean. I mean, this is amazing news right before Christmas. The president couldn't have asked for anything better heading into the end of the year. As we have been talking about for months, it takes time. You'll remember this from the first term. It takes time for the president's policies to kick in. They passed the one big beautiful bill, the working families tax cut in July. They had a situation, obviously, where they needed to go through and implement all those policies. We had a government shutdown, which slowed down everything for a while. The effect of that policy and what you're seeing now at the end of this year and what you will see in the first couple of quarters of next year, I think are going to put this president on the path to having a lot to cheer about heading into those midterm elections.
Katie Zacharia, I mean, do you think that people are feeling it? Like, is this a lagging indicator, a leading indicator? What's going on? Because the president keeps saying things are going well and the numbers back him up. But the question is it in here? Do people feel it?
Well, I think people are so trained to follow the fake news narrative. And I was watching an advertisement last night. And it was like, times are difficult. Here are the ways that you can help in these disparate times under President Trump. And I'm thinking, Sean, all they hear is how bad it is, yet Christmas spending is up to record levels. Travel is up to record levels. I don't think we've seen travel like we did over this last Thanksgiving holiday. So when people have extra money, what do? They travel and they buy gifts. So people feel it, but I don't know if there's this cognitive dissonance because of the fake news that they think times are tough and yet they're having this surplus and surge in their wallet. So what I think over the next, 9-10 months ahead of the midterms that we're going to have to do is ensure that the messaging is clear across the boards, that people, as they are spending money, are understanding that they have money because President Trump has truly fixed the crisis, the economic crisis of Joe Biden in record time. He's had since January 20th to turn around some of the most devastating economic policies that the United States has faced. And at Christmas, people are now finally seeing this surge. So, Sean, I just hope that people get that it's President Trump and not the Democrats, and that it is actually surging, not tanking as the news would like to indicate.
All right, guys, right now, Beam is giving my listeners the ultimate Patriot discount, 40% off. If you've been wondering how I sleep so well at night, Beam's Dream Powder is the answer. Go to shopbeam.com. Use code SPICER at checkout. Shopbeam.com/SPICER. All natural ingredients, reishi, melatonin, L-theanine, magnesium. You're going to love it. Amazing flavor. Shopbeam.com/SPICER. Use code SPICER. Erika Donalds, I want to put you into the way back machine. And I remember back in the election of 1992, when Bill Clinton was running, and the Carville came out with this now famous statement, it's the economy, stupid, right? And there was this thing where George H.W. Bush goes to a supermarket, and the scanner, and again, the story is widely taken out of context because Bush was being shown new technology, and they said that he wasn't in touch with the economic pain that the American people were feeling, that he looked out of touch, whatever. But the reality was, when you go back and look at the statistics, right, where the economy was, it was on the upswing. Bush was right, okay, economically speaking, statistically speaking, but people didn't feel it in their gut. They didn't feel it yet. And that's why I was asking Katie about leading or lagging indicator. And so the question I have is, should we be forcing people to believe something that they're not there yet? Or should we be trying to work on the messaging, as she kind of pointed out, that maybe that's the issue. It's that we need to say more of, hey, I know that you're still struggling. Things are getting better. I am still working.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head there. And I think President Trump started that process when he made the big announcement last week. And instead of whatever we thought it was going to be, he went through all of the wins of his administration, really putting that messaging out there to the American people about all of the ways that he is helping to improve their lives and what they're going to see going forward, and hopefully earlier in 2026. So yes, we see it in the numbers. We certainly see it in his economic policies, but it does take time for that to trickle down, if you will, into people's pocketbooks. People are experiencing lower gas prices, a better economy because 2.5 million people have left the country. And so we are going to see less pressure on prices, but it's going to take time. And Republicans do need to do a better job of letting the American people know what they should see and recognizing the good things that are already taking place.
Yeah, I got to be honest with you. 4.3% growth is amazing, coupled on 4% growth. I mean, like, this is the kind of stuff that you dream of as an economist. It's funny when the CBO, when all of these Washington budgeteers, when the Trump budget came out and they said, we predict 4% growth, they said they were cooking the books and this was all ridiculous. They were trying to manipulate the numbers, and now it's exceeding that. Howard Lutnick, the Commerce Secretary, and I agree with him on this, says that in the second quarter of next year, Rob Bluey, it's going to keep pumping out because all this direct foreign investment, the plants, the jobs, the infrastructure that people are talking about is going to start really coming to fruition. I think that the economy is going to boom end of first quarter, second quarter, into third, where if you're a politician going into a midterm, that's where you really want it.
That's absolutely what you want. And Sean, to go back to the question that you were asking, personal finances and how Americans feel about their own situation is obviously going to drive how they feel about the Republican Party and Donald Trump come November of 2026. And so I think that there are a couple of things that I'd also point out in addition to what already has been said. Number one, they need to continue reminding the American people how bad the economy was under Joe Biden and how inflation hit record highs not seen it for 40 years. So many of them weren't even born by the time, they have no concept of this in their lifetime is what I'm getting at. And secondly, yes, as Erika pointed out, there will be some delay in terms of the implementation. We're not going to see probably until the second quarter when Americans are getting their tax returns. And we've heard from JP Morgan that this is going to be a record year in terms of the money that the federal government will send back to the American people. But it's not going to happen instantaneously. So I think the American people could if they could be patient, and if Donald Trump can continue to hit this message every single day of the week, that's the winning formula.
Another big thing that I kind of noted at the top, Katie, the media was, from the beginning part of this week and tail end of last, was like, Trump's covering up the Epstein files. And then suddenly today, CNN puts out a story that says, new trove of Epstein files is released with Trump's name in many places. And I tweeted out, half joking, if Trump is covering up the Epstein files, he's doing a really bad job. It's like these guys are so eager to say anything negative about the guy. And then when he actually follows through and does, because again, this is the Epstein files. There's a lot of minors. There's a lot of really inappropriate material. There's a lot of sensitive material. And maybe it was just DOJ actually doing their job and looking through it from a human standpoint as opposed to a computer scan. But it's like they forget the narrative that they just perpetuated for days, for weeks. Trump's covering this up. Then today it all comes out and then they're like, forget what we said.
Well, it's the same thing that they did with COVID, and it's this. They hope that the American people forget and are so infected with Trump derangement syndrome that they're not going to hold them accountable for this shifting narrative. But what I continue saying, Sean, and what we all know is that if they had stuff against President Trump, in 2016, 2020, and 2024, you darn well know it would have all been out. So the fact that President Trump is overseeing the release of this should be the leading narrative. The Democrats had an opportunity under Obama. They had an opportunity under Biden. And obviously Epstein was convicted later, but still, all of this stuff was existing. There were investigations into Epstein for long periods of time. And so President Trump deserves the credit for the release of this. Yet they're never going to fully give it to him. They're always going to toe this narrative that he's blocking it because somehow he's protecting himself. And that was even Bill Clinton's spokesperson's statement. This isn't about Bill Clinton. This is about someone else. No. This is about the fact that President Trump is releasing it. And if he had been in these files, as I just said, it would have all been out a long time ago.
You know, Erika, the thing that I thought was so funny is that the Democrats forced this. This is their I mean, first of all, they ignored it. Let's just make sure we put this in context. For the 4 years of Joe Biden and everything, it was, we don't want to talk about this. We don't want to come out. Trump gets in office, and then they're like, we forced the release. And Bill Clinton then turns around and says, Trump's coming after me. And I'm like, dude, this is your party that did this. In fact, when Trump held that presser at Mar-a-Lago yesterday, he said, I like Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton and I have a good relationship. I don't want him to have to deal with this. But again, the media, where is the reality in this? This wasn't a Trump-driven thing. This was a Democrat-driven thing. And then Clinton turns his finger and says, Trump got me, Trump did this.
And it's amazing that they didn't want to touch it when Joe Biden was in office. It wasn't a campaign issue. People are out on the campaign trail. No one was talking about, we need to get Trump elected and we need to get these Epstein files out. It just came up. And as you said, the Democrats and the mainstream media were aghast that they weren't being fully released at the time. We talked about this the last time I was on your show when there was the discharge petition and the Democrats were pushing so hard to get them out. And now they're trying to spin it up again because there's nothing in there that's going to incriminate Trump, which is their number one goal in life, especially leading up to the midterm elections. I think this is going to die out. I'm glad that they were fully released, of course, before the end of the year. Let's sift through it, get through whatever is necessary to get through, even if it is about Bill Clinton. And let's get focused on the midterm elections and beating the Democrats.
Sean, I just throw in there that since you brought up Bill Clinton, let's not forget that one of the whistleblowers that's in the files first reported the problems with Jeffrey Epstein and the child pornography that he possessed in 1996 when Bill Clinton was president. And so what was going on during Clinton's presidency at the FBI and why subsequently didn't other administrations take more serious and a hard look at this? Yes, we can all speculate as to why Joe Biden didn't want these out over his 4 years, but it goes all the way back to when Bill Clinton was president, and obviously quite embarrassing to look at those photos of Bill Clinton. Wish that my eyes actually hadn't seen them because they are so terrible. But yes, I certainly think that at the end of the day, this means that Donald Trump is going to follow through on his promise to be transparent, and the Democrats are going to be left with little, if anything, to use against him.
And President Trump added on his Truth Social at the end of one of the long truths that he gave. And by the way, I kicked Epstein out of Mar-a-Lago when I knew about, he came out right in front of it. This had been happening, and I even kicked him out long before it was an issue. I love that.
Yeah, I mean, he brought it up yesterday. The bottom line is, if I'm Clinton, all these pictures of you in the hot tub, and to Rob's point, this is, again, the context matters. Clinton knew he was a bad dude. Right. And so this idea is like, I didn't know that, depends on what the definition of is a scumbag is. And so he knew. But Erika, I want to touch on something funny. So in the last, whatever we've been talking, 16 minutes, we talked about the president putting out a statement on GDP and the growth. We talked about this press conference he had yesterday, talked about shipbuilding and all this other stuff. What else? I'm trying to think. OK, but then let me read you a headline from the Associated Press. It says, Trump holds event with Rubio and Hegseth during vacation as tensions with Venezuela mount. And again, going back to what he is not doing a good job at, if this guy's on vacation, he doesn't do a very good job of vacationing, because let me tell you about the Sean Spicer version of vacation. We do no work. And the idea that this is a guy who is out making announcements, who's pushing out information, doing press conferences. The AP literally, that's a lie. He is not on vacation.
Trump has been in the public eye for the purposes of his politics, since 2016. I don't think we have seen him take a vacation for the past 10 years. Obviously, he doesn't unplug like the rest of us would like to do, at least for a couple of days. That was such a ridiculous headline. And you wonder, what is their goal here? To say that President Trump is not working hard enough for the American people? I mean, to spin the fact that Trump doesn't work hard enough. I don't think anyone is believing that, especially with the true socials that come out in the middle of the night. That this man is always working. And even in the press conference, he made like 5 different announcements. It wasn't just one thing.
Well, one of the things that he announced was, or that they referenced and that he announced, is the guy, speaking of affordability and all this stuff, he also has announced this week a whole nother slew of drug companies that are lowering their prices. Again, you want to talk about affordability and real action. For people who drug prices and healthcare costs have been going up, this is a guy who's now getting all of these commonly used prescription drugs that a lot of Americans, older Americans, are dependent on, taken way down. That's another, check that box. Talk about it for a guy on vacation, Rob.
Yeah, Sean, thank you for bringing up healthcare. That's an important announcement. We shouldn't lose sight of what President Trump has been able to accomplish on that issue just on his own in the White House. But it's going to take the efforts of Republicans in Congress to do something as well. And of course, they passed here at the end of the year some legislation. The Democrat-created crisis with the Obamacare subsidies remains, and they are trying to hang that around the necks of Republicans. I don't think it's ultimately going to work, because what my hope is that Speaker Johnson and Leader Thune will bring forward some sort of a health care bill that will address the affordability issues that were created by Barack Obama and the policies that were put in place 15 years ago. And so I think that should be a priority of the president's in the new year. And I'm glad to see that he's already started to talk about it here in December.
Do you guys, let me ask you this, both Katie and Erika, to go off what Rob said. I as much as I hate having, I feel like we literally got handed the hot potato from Democrats. They forced Obamacare down the American people. They forced subsidies down the American people's throats because their program sucked and it's not affordable. And now we have to fix it. And the problem is that it is very personal for a lot of people. It's a lot of money of their budget, and it's critical. So if you're a woman getting pregnant, if you're an older American facing mobility or mental health, I mean, there's so many aspects of life for so many different people that are crucial to having good health care. And you can't blame the American people for a system that Democrats did. And so, Erika, I guess to draft off what Rob said, do you actually have hope that the Republicans will do something on this issue in January?
Well, I hope they at least get the word out to their constituents about the major deals that President Trump is making with these most favored nations. It's important for people to even go on the list that was recently announced. I mean, some of these drugs, I know people who take them regularly, and we're talking about a difference between $400 a month to $89 a month for pills that people are taking their entire lives. That's an incredible amount of savings, sometimes 10x savings on some of the drugs that common drugs. These are not rare drugs that we're talking about. So that's just another point on the board for President Trump when we go into the 2026 midterms. People are going to definitely start to feel those savings in their pocketbooks, especially as he signs more and more of these most favored nation deals. It's actually a brilliant strategy as Congress hopefully starts to resolve this issue as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
Katie, do you think that the Republicans should make this a priority? I mean, I get it. It's not our fault. But we have an opportunity to do something really big and huge here, add market forces into the whole equation, and do something that will help, almost every American achieve greater health, greater savings, et cetera.
Yes, absolutely. The Republicans can continue on the strategy of fixing what the Democrats broke consistently. And Obamacare is case in point. And so many Americans, as you just said, feel that on such a deep personal level. So if you look at this idea, President Trump has said it, I don't know how many times, I can't even count. He says it so much. And I hope that people are hearing it. I want to put money back in the pockets and bank accounts of Americans so they have choice over their healthcare. Health savings accounts is not a novel idea, but it is the best idea for Americans to actually feel the results of true change. If you just shift the money around and create these policies and committees and this over here and this over there, that they don't feel that, but a health savings account gives them the realization that, wow, I have autonomy over money for my healthcare. And I love this idea. And I know that there's, I think, 4 Republicans sided with the Democrats and kind of thwarted this idea that we were actually going to really shift over Obamacare into something new. And President Trump is going to continue fighting for the American people, and we will feel it. And it is absolutely an issue that must be resolved before the midterm elections, if not just at the top of January, while we still have the ability to. It's a must, Sean.
Guys, I want to switch topics for a second because there's, I've been dunking on the media and a bunch of this stuff, and I want to dunk once more. The nation was captivated a couple days ago by this issue up here where I am in Rhode Island at Brown University. And after the shooter, by the way, I love the fact that they all these people in Rhode Island said, we got him. And I'm like, no, he killed himself in a storage locker in Salem, New Hampshire. You didn't catch him. He killed himself. Like, let's be clear. But they want to take a victory lap. So Providence Mayor Brett Smiley and Providence Police Chief Oscar Perez were honored at a basketball game after the Brown University and MIT shootings were cracked by a homeless man, right? The crowd was seen giving the two a standing ovation in the first quarter. Okay, these guys in the Brown University, folks, are all taking this victory lap like they did anything, as opposed to the fact that they ignored it and they caused it, right? So here's what I want to play for you, though. The guy that they should have listened to was a custodian at Brown University. And I want you to listen to what he had to say about what he saw and what he did prior to the shooting, prior to at least 3 people, 2 at Brown, the MIT professor, being killed, cameras being shut off, okay, all of this stuff, and no one's being accountable. But listen to what the custodian had to say. Go.
I reported him 3 times to the ESS staff. I was on the phone with my fiance, and I said, this guy just looks weird to me. I was like, I got to say something. I can't really say, I just felt, something kept telling me, don't ignore it, don't ignore it. I had caught him the last time on December 1st, and I was right behind him as he was coming in the building. I was coming back from my break, and I went right to the ESS staff, and I had said to the ESS staff member, I said, hey, this guy looks suspicious. I said, he just went in the bathroom. I said, you should go check him out. He's like, I'm not here for that. I'm here to cover a Palestinian event that the kids never showed up for. And I said, oh, okay.
Okay, so let me just be clear on this. The custodian, multiple times, they say 12, sees this guy casing out this classroom at Brown. He reports him to security and says, you might want to check this guy out because it's really suspicious. I keep seeing him here casing this place out. He's not a student. And what does security say? We're not here for that. We're here to cover up a Palestinian event. Erika, there are dead people, innocent civilians, because Brown turned off cameras because they didn't want to get them on record for what they were doing to protest Israel. They ignored security warnings, and these knuckleheads are getting a standing ovation at a basketball game for being soft on crime, defunding the police. I mean, it's insane.
It's infuriating. I was on the school board here in Florida when the Parkland shooting happened, and we went through extensive best practices research. We put together papers, and every school in Florida put these hardening processes in place. And the entire country was watching and copying what we were doing here in Florida to ensure that their students were safe. Brown University, with their $8 billion endowment, didn't have the decency to protect their students and even put in the most basic best practices in crime prevention, in listening to those who have put tips in surveillance and response. And so they do not deserve to be honored whatsoever. I cannot imagine what these families are going through, but these people need to be held accountable.
Erika, I was just going to add to that, Sean, that we have seen over the course of the last decade efforts by so many schools, whether it be at the elementary, high school, and even college level, putting in those safety precautions. And why this was not done at Brown means that the parents should be asking who's going to be held accountable for this, not applauding and cheering for them at a basketball game. It's really sad that we live in a culture where they feel that they need to get that participation trophy in some regard, for their efforts here when they really was not deserved at all.
Katie, to me, the whole incident shows how backwards everything is, right? I made this point a couple times and no one seems to, like, Ella Cook, by every account, is an absolutely outstanding young woman. No tributes to her on the Today Show or Good Morning America. No talking about her work because she was, the vice president of the college Republicans. So we don't want to honor that, right? We don't want to talk about the fact that the cameras were off because Brown did not want to have any evidence that kids were, destroying campus or vandalizing things because they were protesting something that Brown liked. There's no talk about the fact that Brown didn't want or cooperate with police leading up to this. There's no talk about the security lapses because, again, we don't want to highlight all of the negative aspects of this progressive agenda. And that's, to me, such a shame because Erika's right. Normally there's this lessons learned and all this stuff, but we've moved on. We're just going to clap at a basketball game for Mayor Smiley. Hey, thanks, buddy, for making a fool out of yourself and not doing anything. And I mean, where's the Brown leadership? These guys, I cannot imagine why any parent in the world would ever send their kid to Brown.
Well, the universities have become this metaphor for or analogy to what the blue cities across the country have. Look, they were celebrating, Summer of Love, the BLM riots, right? We had mayors out there protesting with the people, Mayor Garcetti in LA, mask free, all protesting, destroying our city. Our home was broken into during that time, Sean. And yet they were celebrating this. They were not celebrating the people or protecting the people as they should have been in the homes that were being broken into. They were protecting the people who were protesting on the streets and destroying our city. And this is exactly what they're doing in universities. We're going to cover up essentially the crime. We're going to cover up the protests to protect ourselves. We're going to protect the people that are breaking the law, that are destroying the property at the cost and at the expense of innocent people. So these students are paying the price. It's the same thing that they're doing with illegal immigrants, Sean. They're going to protect illegal immigrants and criminals over American citizens, the Democrats and the left, because they have decided that this is more important than shifting the narrative to we want to protect American citizens. And so universities should step all the way in front of this. This needs to be blown open completely. People need to understand the depth of what Brown University did and how they're covering this up, truly, because we will not correct this just as we're not correcting a lot of these blue city, sanctuary city laws because it's not being exposed enough, Sean.
Erika, you mentioned your background in education. Obviously, you lead this effort there at America First Policy Institute. You're on a school board. You will be the First Lady of Florida. There was a new report out this week that I believe should be bipartisan, I believe should be an effort going forward. It says this: a new lawsuit alleges that social media companies knowingly exploited children's attention for profit and fueled a mental health crisis. Jonathan Haidt, the author of The Anxious Generation, The Coddling of the American Mind, has been one of the guys at the forefront of this, saying, hey guys, these phones, social media are destroying the next generation of Americans, frankly, the next generation of all kids. And because his research shows that it's global. And yet we sit around and shake our heads and go, gosh, what should we do? It's like, think about the headline there. Social media, they're talking about that could be the next big tobacco. Like, we're sitting here watching our kids get destroyed. I think this is an opportunity for both parties, but if not, I don't really care. I hope the Republican Party, Erika, stands up and says, we've got to start tackling how we're dealing with kids and social media. Australia just banned it for kids under 16. Should we be leading that effort here in the United States on the Republican side and saying we're going to be the party and the movement that does this?
Oh, absolutely. And we are in many ways looking to protect children from the dangers of technology. All of us as a parent of teenagers, I'm sure we can all agree, it did catch us by surprise how addictive and how damaging these things are for our children. But we do have things like the App Store Accountability Act, which is giving parents more control, more transparency over what their children are downloading and what they have access to. In states like Florida, there was a huge debate over whether parents should be able to decide that that, or whether we want the state to say no more social media for students of a certain age. And, more and more parents, they want to be able to make that decision. So it's about educating parents and putting power in their hands, ensuring they have the ability to limit these things on behalf of their children, but not taking those rights away from them. We also just saw polling this morning, actually, Tony Fabrizio, which showed that parents overwhelmingly want the federal government to step in when it comes to AI and protecting our children from the potential dangers there. So I think we're going to see continued movement on that. President Trump, David Sachs have been leading on that effort as well to ensure that we have one regulation across the country and not a patchwork of regulations that's going to limit innovation or fail to protect kids in certain states. So I think Republicans are already leading on this issue, and the data certainly supports it.
Rob, I'm a big conservative. I believe in personal choice, but there's a difference when you're actually going after children that A, can't make a choice, or B, whose brains aren't developed, in the same way that we wouldn't allow kids to smoke cigarettes because it's going to harm them. It's one, if you want to do something to your body when you're a legal adult, that's your choice. But for kids, I do feel like we have the obligation to protect them.
Yes, and there is an element of personal responsibility here, maybe even more so parental responsibility, to ensure that your kids are not being fed this toxic information. I think it's been encouraging that so many schools, whether it's in Republican states or Democrat states or blue or red cities, wherever it might be, have taken steps to say, no, the phones need to go away. We're going to collect them at the start of the school day. We're not going to let you have them. When it comes to AI, I think that's a whole nother situation where obviously I have kids, and I know from talking to their teachers how concerned they are about how addictive AI can be in terms of the ability to get answers so quickly and not use your own mind and creative thinking skills to come up with answers. And so they have moved to a completely different system in which so much more of the work is being done in the classroom today as opposed to homework. And so there are a whole number of implications here that I worry about with regard to my own kids. We have told them that they're to stay off of social media. It's a conversation they need to have with their parents, and despite the peer pressure, there are so many young kids, even preteens who are using social media platforms. I think that the best advice I could give parents is keep them off for as long as you can.
Hey, Katie, another interesting movement thing that got a big shout out this week, and I don't think it was intentional, but the New Yorker magazine was trying to write something about the MAHA movement, the Make America Healthy Again movement. And it had to admit that 4 in 10 parents now support the MAHA movement. 4 in 10. And it also notes that half of young people believe in doing their own health research matters. I think this is a huge win. For so long, the government and big food, big pharma have said, this is what is healthy for you. And we've kind of started to pull back the curtain and realize maybe you guys can't be trusted. And this MAHA movement is really taking hold.
And Sean, it's funny because you look at an Oregon, a California, a Washington state, and I'm just doing that because I'm on the Pacific. Listen, those are blue states, but MAHA is highly applicable and definitely appeals to even the most granola kind of hard left Democrat as they start to think, we're seeing this health movement. We're seeing people talk about it. And unfortunately for the Democrats and for the lefties in California, it's Republicans talking about this. It was not the Democrats. And they're forced to have to come to this reconciliation moment that maybe they like the MAHA movement. Maybe they like that the food additives are being discussed and food coloring. And again, I'm referencing this because I grew up in the most liberal lefty town in California, where these hippies, who are definitely my friends, but shaped my narrative and kind of view of food, are now saying to me, man, we're just grateful RFK Jr. is in the Trump administration. If nobody else, at least he's there because he's bringing to light things we've been talking about for decades in our little community co-ops. And so, Sean, what's happening is this flip is this flip of the narrative is that actually Republicans are leading on health, not Democrats as they thought they would. And it's a beautiful thing to see in my Democrat state.
Yeah. Erika, before we get to some holiday cheer and fun, you mentioned it is Festivus, and Rand Paul came out with his yearly report. The thing that was so funny, so he calls out all of the grievances that he has in the government, but let me just read you it calls out among the highlights in Rand Paul's reports, $40 million to social media influencers to promote getting the COVID-19 vaccine and to radical and ethnic minority groups. Here's the kicker, over $5 million to dose dogs with cocaine and over $1 million to teach teenage ferrets to binge drink alcohol. I don't think Doge is done, do you?
No, we need to continue the Doge effort. And actually, Doge should be going back through all of Rand Paul's Festivus reports over the years. I can assure you those are probably recurring expenses that need to be rooted out of our federal government. So much waste, so much to be cut. Hopefully, the Trump administration, I believe, will continue to root out the waste, fraud, and abuse in our federal government because, man, there's a lot. And there's always things on that list that you're just shocked at. So thank goodness for Rand Paul. Happy Festivus to him.
Happy Festivus. Rob Bluey, I mean, were you more shocked that they were paying money for teenage ferrets to binge drink alcohol or to coke up dogs?
Oh, that's a tough call. I'm not sure. Probably the ferrets, I guess. But Sean, let's just to take a step back here. This is great that we talk about this every year and that Rand Paul does this, and not just once a year, but obviously he's a champion for reducing the role of government in our lives and cutting spending. But we can go back and remember that it was the outrageous spending during COVID, particularly during Joe Biden, the beginning of Joe Biden's presidency, that set us on the path of the affordability crisis that everybody's obsessed about now. And so cutting government spending has a direct implication for lowering inflation in our country and reducing the cost of living, because when you print more money to fund all of these programs, obviously the cost of everything goes up. And so it's an important reminder for Republicans in Congress as they look forward to another deadline for getting the government spending bill done in early part of 2026, that they should pair that with some government spending cuts as well.
All right, I want to have some holiday fun. This is a quick lightning round before we get to winners and losers. Before I even do that, just a quick programming note. The President of the United States has made sure that we all know that tonight is the Kennedy Center Honors on CBS, and that he wants us to know that he will be the master of ceremonies. If really good, would you like me to leave the presidency in order to make hosting a full-time job? We'll be honoring true greats in the history of entertainment: Sylvester Stallone, Michael Crawford, Kiss, George Strait, and Gloria Gaynor. So tune in, and you have to now decide whether or not you want him to stay president or to take up full-time hosting duties. Katie, real quick, though, are you a Christmas Eve or Christmas Day kind of person? Like, do you open gifts and go to church, or do you do that on the eve or day?
Well, first I want to say I was there for President Trump's MC skills at the honors, and he was phenomenal. So everyone should watch the show. It was a great show. Okay, and I'm a Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. We have traditions on both. One present on Christmas Eve, and then all kinds of things we do Christmas morning. So the kids get it. It's like you can really tee up the energy. I have 4 kids, and the energy starts on Christmas Eve for the kids and leads into the morning of excitement.
Erika, how about the Donalds family? What do you guys do?
We have traditions for both days: church on Christmas Eve and Cuban sandwiches and Spanish bean soup, a Tampa tradition since my mom was a little girl, actually. And then I don't let any Christmas presents go under the tree until Christmas Eve. So it's an empty tree, and then everyone wakes up in the morning with a tree full of presents. That's when we open all of our gifts and have family over and cook a great steak and potatoes meal.
Okay. How about the Bluey family?
Yeah, Christmas Eve has always been big in our family. I grew up in a Polish community in upstate New York, and my Polish relatives would always have a traditional Wigila celebration in which we'd have kapusta and pierogies. And so I've carried that tradition on in our family. It's much smaller than the dozens of people who would show up at my Aunt Mary's house. But Christmas Eve always has a special part in my heart for that reason.
That's very cool.
Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.